Hello everyone, it's Belladonna again and Madam Weaves here to talk to you about 5 of our favorite things regarding one of the greatest films ever made, David Lynch's The Elephant Man. Number 1. The very quality of this film. Now, many people have seen this film and they think, well, that's a very old movie, right? It looks as though it was filmed in maybe the 1940s or something. David Lynch brilliantly filmed this on old black and white film stock, which even then in the late 70s, early 80s was not easy to come by. And he got reels of old film stock. So this was filmed on the type of stock that would have been done long ago. So it's not desaturated, it's not made to look a certain way. It looks just the way it does. No special effects to make it so. And on top of that, you had London at that time. Much of it looked exactly like it did in the film. It didn't start really changing until a few years later, really. And Lynch had even said that. He came back a few years later, it was very different. So it looked exactly how it should. Now, the set designing, the costuming, the lighting, because there's a lot of use of gas lighting as it would have been used in those days, everything about the look of this movie makes you think you have been transported back in time, and you're seeing the story of the Elephant Man unfold as though you were there. It is essentially just beautiful. There is no movie that I think touches a period style flick like this one does. It just looks like you went into an old theater and saw an old movie, and you're getting a really beautiful experience that way, combined with Lynch's artistic directing style. The quality of this film alone should earn every possible award that it could have gotten, should have gotten, and should get again if people were smart enough to review it. 2. The story itself. Now, this is based on the story of Joseph, also known as John Merrick, the Elephant Man. Now, the story that I believe it was taken from was the tellings of Dr. Treves, the man who is in this story, on the basis of this man, John or Joseph Merrick's life. There are many inconsistencies and inaccuracies. Some of that I believe is based on what information was just available to them at the time, and I believe there's a lot of creative license in here as well. The true story of Joseph Merrick is not an uninteresting story at all. I mean, can you only imagine going through his life the way he did in this period of time? But this particular story draws on a more emotional aspect of it. So you have what is essentially based on a true story, though I don't believe it's ever really touted that way, based on a true story. No, I don't think so. Nominated for 8 Academy Awards, didn't win them, but based on a true story indeed. And so you have a very fascinating look at a very unique and interesting man. It's not a complete fabrication, but it's a very beautiful look at it. I mean, I tell you, if you're not in tears by the end of this movie, you don't have a heart. It is moving in every way possible. The music, the look, and the very adaptation and understanding of this story. Mr. Lynch has done some adaptations here and there, and he tends to tell the story his way. Think of it that Mr. Lynch was asked to do Return of the Jedi. Holy crap, that would have been, I don't know, might have been awesome. I don't know. But in the end, Mr. Lynch chose to take this story, take the core of it, and make it his own, making it beautiful beyond belief. 3. The cast of this film. There are some stellar performers in this movie. Not just the main cast, and we'll talk a bit about them, but the overall cast, from the supporting cast to the minor cast members. I don't know exactly how Mr. Lynch chooses all of his performers. I know he's very particular, and many of those people who talked about working with him say it is a wonderful and amazing experience to behold. But he got absolutely the right people to play every single part from the small to the big. Now, of course, you have people like John Gielgud, one of my favorites, playing the head of the hospital. Everything John Gielgud says is perfection. Every line he gives in this film is not an exception. Just having John Gielgud was like an accomplishment in and of itself. You have Freddie Jones, who will appear in other Lynch works. Freddie Jones playing the owner of the Elephant Man. My God, they don't make actors like that anymore, of that type of caliber. Like they step out of a Shakespearean stage onto the screen. You believe every word, every movement, every look on their faces. And Bancroft comes in there because, as some may know, Mel Brooks actually produced this film under a different name at the time because he did not want people to believe it was going to be a comedy like Blazing Saddles, The Young Frankenstein. So you have his wife, Anne Bancroft, Mel Brooks. In the mix of this, everything about the cast in this film, I'm serious, there's not one individual I would say, oh no, no good. Everything was perfect, even from the annoying little children and their spitballs. Everything was perfect in this film for the cast. 4. Moving on to the perfection of the cast, I would be wrong if I did not single out Anthony Hopkins. Anthony Hopkins, say the name, Anthony Hopkins. There are few actors like Sir Anthony Hopkins. You can see crap movies with him, and it's just great to watch him. He's one of those. What's fascinating, he'd already had a good career up to this point. He'd done many great films, very successful in his own right, but not top tier just yet. This film shows, I think, all of the eloquence and elegance of his performance ability as was building up to that point in his life. You trust him, you like him, you believe in him, you believe he's a good man, that he genuinely wants to help this elephant man, even though it starts out as sort of a sideshow freak hunt almost for doctors. Everything about Anthony Hopkins is always wonderful, but his Dr. Treves in this alone pulls at your heartstrings, gets under your skin and makes you believe. Now, the fascinating part is that Jonathan Demme, the director of Silence of the Lambs, would cast him as Dr. Hannibal Lecter based on this role. Totally different characters, just doctors of a sort. And yet this was the role that led him to being one of the greatest film characters, one of the greatest literary characters ever written, Dr. Hannibal Lecter. No Dr. Treves, no Dr. Lecter. Anthony Hopkins was already great. He came into his own at this film, in my opinion, and the snowball effect led to a gargantuan career that still goes on to this day. A man in his 80s, still performing amazing work. I can watch anything Anthony Hopkins, but Dr. Treves is a crowning achievement. And 5, not at all the least of the last, John Hurt, playing the Elephant Man himself. Now, the makeup, the appliances for the Elephant Man were actually cast from the Elephant Man's remains, so they look very accurate to the real individual. This was a time when such effects were very revolutionary. Lynch tried to make his own makeup, it didn't work out, so he had this stuff put together, and they cast it from the actual remains, and John Hurt disappeared underneath the Elephant Man. He became the Elephant Man. It was, from what I understand, from what he'd said, a wretched and horrible experience to be inside of that. But he really became the Elephant Man. To see that character is disturbing and alarming, to say the least. You can understand many of the people's reactions in the film, and you look and you see a monster. Underneath the monster is the man, as portrayed by John Hurt, bringing John Merrick to life. I can only say it's an amazing performance beyond belief. I don't know if anyone else could have done it. I do understand Mr. David Bowie did a version of it on stage. I've not seen it, of course, but even still, I cannot imagine anyone other than John Hurt bringing this character to life, not just because of his great acting talents, and they were considerable, rest in peace, Everything he did was wonderful, but the work, the effort to suffer for the art underneath this costume, this makeup, this appliances, this latex, for many, many hours under the hot lights, and to so amazingly bring this character to life. You adore this character, you love this character, no matter his appearance. You go beyond that and realize the man inside. John Merrick, John Hurt. Now, there was no best makeup category before this film. Because of this film, that was created, so they didn't even win the freaking award. It didn't exist. But based on the work that was done to create the Elephant Man, that award became a thing and still is today. But the performance of John Hurt, I don't know. Like I said, if you don't come to the end of this movie and you're not in tears, you are an awful human being. John Hurt makes you believe in the Elephant Man. Well, that was our 5 things, and the only ones I have time for because there's so many more than 5 things that we loved about the Elephant Man. David Lynch is the Elephant Man. I truly believe one of the greatest films ever made, and truly one of the most beautiful. So what do you say, Madam Weeps, the Elephant Man? 2 paws up? I think so. 2 paws up for the Elephant Man. Watch the Elephant Man if you have not. Watch it again if you have. There's nothing quite like it. Until next time, bye for now.